Coming up on this edition of the Next Man Up podcast, DMan and I break down the Browns debacle in the Berg. What the heck happened there? Baker Mayfield, is he the answer? Who knows? Will they bounce back this Sunday against the Bengals? We also dive into the World Series. We're both happy the cheaters aren't there, but who's going to win it? And how far away are the Indians from catching any of these teams? And welcome to the Next Man Up podcast. Kenny Roda, the Roadman, along with the DMan, Dennis Manoloff, and of course our executive producer, Chase Smith from the Press Play Podcast Network. And we are ready to rock and roll with you. A lot to talk about, a lot to get into. The Cleveland Browns 4-1, the Steelers 4-0. Huge game in the AFC North. The Browns have arrived. The Steelers, are they for real? They meet head on Sunday in the Steel City in Pittsburgh. And guys, I'll be honest with you. I wrote a game note. Pick 6 by Minkah Fitzpatrick. Game over. That's when I knew it was going to be a long day for the Cleveland Browns. And the Steelers went on for a 38-7 victory. DMan, did you have the same feeling that I did once Baker Mayfield threw it right between the numbers to Minkah Fitzpatrick?
Yeah. And by the way, before we get going too much, I need to take my shoes off while we do this podcast to give it the credit that it deserves. The Fitzpatrick pick 6, you knew it was going to be a problem at 10-0, and here we go again, that type of deal. But I'm not going to give the Browns an out there and say, well, the game was over at that point. They stunk the joint up from stem to stern. It was an utter disaster. I would say embarrassment, but we know professional athletes these days don't get embarrassed anymore. As long as the check's clear, they don't get embarrassed. So I'm not going to give the Browns players the satisfaction of saying it was an embarrassment. But what a steaming pile of horse muffins the Browns turned in. You know, on my post-game show, the end zone show on WTM 1100 and 106.9 FM, I shortchanged the opposition when I said that the bookends right now for the Cleveland Browns 4-game winning streak, the bookends were a combined 75-13 being outscored by Baltimore and Pittsburgh. I shortchanged.
Shame on you. Come on. Where's that Northwestern math at, Dennis Manoloff?
It's actually 76-13. So sorry about that, Ravens. I kept thinking they only won 37-6 instead of 38-6. And this is the problem. And this is why those of us who have followed the Browns now for decades are cynical in our old age, because we've seen this movie before, over and over and over. And the season begins with high hopes, and Kevin Stefanski, the new coach, the new staff, and you say, okay, right out of the gate, even though it's a COVID-19 training camp, you still got a really good test here out of the chute. Let's see the Browns respond with a well-played game. Even if they lose, let's see a competitive game. No. They get trucked by the Ravens. The next 4 games, the Bengals aren't very good. The Washington football team's not very good. Dallas's defense is terrible. The Indianapolis Colts handed you that game because Phil Rivers did what Phil Rivers can do, and that is give the other team points. So, the 4-game winning streak was great, but it was built on a little bit of sand. Well, here comes the next legitimate test. Steelers in Pittsburgh. This is exactly where you want to see how much progress the Cleveland Browns have made. Is the 4-game winning streak legit? Is the 4-1 record legit? How much improvement have they made since they got trucked by the Ravens? And what do? They go out and look just as worse against the Steelers. And so I didn't want to hear it on my post-game show. I don't want to hear it from listeners of this podcast, even though we can't hear them. That this, don't worry about it. It's 4-2. Not right now. I'm not over that mess that was 38-7 Steelers yesterday. I'm not over it yet as we tape on a Monday night. I'm not sitting here going to go, 4-2 is great, and they're still in the playoff position. They're still in the playoff pool if the season ended today. This was the SOBs. This was the same old Browns. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. And it creates not only doubt in my mind, but doubt in other people's minds. And it should create doubt in the Browns players' minds that maybe they're not up to snuff. Because here's the thing. You could talk about wanting to make the playoffs. And you could say, well, we're still in the playoff chase. And as I said, if the season ended today, they'd be in. But ultimately, if you really want to be a good team, you must be in control of your division. You can't rely on wild card entries every year. After yesterday's game, there is a chasm between the Ravens and Steelers and the Browns. And that is a huge problem. I don't care that their record is 4-2. The problem is they are decidedly third best in their division.
DMan, here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought going into this game, I thought it would be a higher scoring game. I thought the Browns would be competitive, but in the end, I thought the Steelers would win. I had it 31-24 was my prediction. And the reason I gave that prediction was this. Baker Mayfield was playing with bruised ribs. OBJ was sick, might have been COVID, had him tested. It wasn't COVID, but he missed practice. Jarvis Landry was hurt. Wyatt Teller was out. Carl Joseph was still out. Ronnie Harrison was out. The safeties, the secondaries, and Dejo. How he's still on this team is mind-boggling to me. Should have been cut after the first game against the Baltimore Ravens. But they had a lot of injuries, a lot of question marks going into this game. So I didn't think they would go into Pittsburgh with a healthy Ben Roethlisberger and beat the Steelers, but I thought they would at least be competitive, that they would, make a game of it. Their defense stinks. It's horrible. It's given up the second most points in the NFL. The Vikings are the only team that's given up more points than the Cleveland Browns. So I figured, you know what? It's going to be a high-scoring game. The offense been hitting on all cylinders up until when Nick Chubb went down, and that's the other guy I want to bring up because I think you're seeing the ripple effect without Nick Chubb on this offense. Yes, Wyatt Teller, that's a guy that they miss. No question about it. But the Steelers were without their all-pro guard, David DeCastro. Did you notice that he was out of the game? No, you didn't, okay? They just plugged somebody in, some rookie in. I don't even know his name, 69 or 7. I don't know who it was. But it doesn't matter. They just blocked it and ran and threw and did whatever they wanted. Well, you put Hubbard in there and, didn't work out so well. Worst offensive line game of the season for the Browns. But Nick Chubb has the domino effect on this team, the ripple effect, whatever you want to call it. He affects the running game, which in turn affects the passing game, which in turn affects Baker Mayfield, which in turn affects the outcome of games. Kareem Hunt wasn't 100%, and we're seeing that he's more of a third down back now. And so many things just lined up for me not to be able to pick the Browns to win this game, but I thought at least they would score some points, even with the dinged up Baker Mayfield. And if he couldn't play, then Kevin Stefanski, who also deserves some of the blame for this loss, should have either A, not started him, B, pulled him sooner. I tweeted out after halftime, I would have made the change, DMan, and went to Case Keenum after what I saw from Baker Mayfield. I gave him a little bit of some leeway there to start him for the first series of the second half and then maybe pull him if it doesn't go well. Well, Kevin Stefanski, we saw he's still a first-year head coach, right? We said give him a mulligan for the Ravens game. Fine. Well, this is week number 6. No mulligans here. And he was out-coached. Baker Mayfield and the offense stunk. The defense stunk. They just got annihilated in every capacity, mentally, physically, on the scoreboard, however you want to say it. So I'm with you. This is a team I think that can compete for the playoffs, but not for the division. But you know what, D-Man? That might be okay, being that they haven't made the playoffs since 2002. Think about what a monumental step it will be if for the first time in 18
Can't
years
do it.
the
Can't
Browns
do it.
actually make the – what do you expect them to go to the Super Bowl? Go no
Roadman.
playoffs for 18 years and go right to the Super Bowl? No, you have to take steps. And so at 4-2, one game better than I thought they'd be after 6 games. I had them at 3-3. There's the potential to be 5-3 or 6-2 going into the break. And look at their schedule the second half of the season, which lines up perfectly for Baker Mayfield, because in Baker's 16 wins that he's been credited with, and I didn't give him the Jets win, Baker has beat only 4 teams with a winning record at the end of the season, or in this case, the Colts 4-2 to start the year. So lesser teams with losing records, that lines up perfectly for Baker and this team. And you know what? You get the 9 or 10 wins, you could make the playoffs, and they need that experience of just getting to the playoffs before they can become a contender in the division. That's the way I'm looking at this. And I would be fine if they finished 3rd in the division with 10 wins or 9 wins and made the playoffs, because they get to at least experience the playoffs, which is what you need for a young, inexperienced team.
Maybe Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, but not right now. No, the wound is too fresh. The Band-Aid doesn't even cover the scrapes and
24-hour rule,
and
DMan.
the gouges that were administered by the Steelers. I mean, this was varsity against 5th grade. It was ridiculously mismatched, and yeah, I just can't go there right now. I can't go to the silver lining 4-2 playoff card. I mean, when I look at the Steelers game, if you would have told me the Steelers were before the game, if you'd have told me the Steelers were going to have 18 first downs, Roethlisberger was going to throw for $162, and the Steelers' total yardage was going to be 277, I would have said, sign me up for that. I can't wait. The Browns will probably win this thing 24-21 or 17-14 or something like that. But instead, despite those very pedestrian numbers, the Steelers routed the Browns. And by the way, 38-7, come on. I mean, it could have been 50-7. The Steelers had an opportunity to drop 50 on Cleveland, just like the Ravens did. And so I'm just sick to my stomach by what I saw. I saw a team that was ill-prepared, was out-coached, out-muscled, out-hustled. And, I keep going back to the End Zone show. The callers were saying, some of them were saying, oh, well, you know what, we'll take this lesson and learn from it. You know what? I've heard that how many times after a Steelers game? Oh, we'll just learn from this, learn from this, learn from this. What has this franchise learned in the last 17 times they played the Steelers at the big ketchup bottle? What exactly have you learned? Because you certainly haven't applied it to make any changes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have lost 17 consecutive games at Heinz Field. So I don't want to hear, well, we'll watch the tape and we'll learn from it. Browns have proven they don't learn anything from the Steelers beatdowns, especially in Pittsburgh. And one of the things I've said, and I'll say it again for the millionth time, it's my early Christmas gift every year that I wish the Browns would put under my tree. Please, Cleveland Browns front office, give me one linebacker who makes plays. Give me a linebacker who flies around the field. Oh, I don't know. He looks maybe like TJ Watt or Bud Dupree. How about one of those? Or Jason Gilden or Joey Porter or Kevin Green. And on we go with the Steelers linebackers. Give me one Browns linebacker who actually is a disruptor. And you say, wow, they have Myles Garrett. He's a defensive player of the year candidate. Yeah. But why can't you have another guy at the second level who flies around? Just because you have an edge rusher who's really good doesn't mean you have to stop there. Doesn't mean that's it. When was the last time the Cleveland Browns had a linebacker that was everywhere? That's how it is when the Steelers play the Browns and you see Watt and Dupree. They are everywhere. So That's one of my early Christmas gifts. It's on my wish list every year. But the bigger issue, I think, beyond everything else, you have to ask this question. Is the Bake Show ready for prime time? Is he going to be capable of delivering victories that you need if you want to go places? Not just scratch into the playoffs, but if you want to win playoff games. And like you said, Roadman, it is unrealistic to expect this team to all of a sudden go on a Super Bowl run when they're third best in the division. But my point is, I'm looking at Baker even beyond this year, saying, all right, let's say the Browns get in this year and get punked in the first round. So you come back with high hopes. Is Mayfield the guy? Because he looks so overmatched against really good defenses. And I get it. A lot of quarterbacks don't look good against really good defenses. Otherwise, the defenses wouldn't be really good. I understand that. But I am waiting for Baker Mayfield to just carve a good defense. Like, he looks good back there, and he's slinging the ball around, and he's putting it right on the hands. Not against the Jets, not against the Carolina Panthers when they packed it in a couple years ago, not against the Bengals. I want a stellar stud performance against a really good team, and I haven't seen it. And I know Baker was injured. Yes, he was. But unfortunately for the Bake Show, when you make the decision to play a game in the NFL despite being injured, sorry, nobody cares that your ribs were hurt. And I'm not saying Baker was making excuses either. He's one of the toughest dudes I've seen play the quarterback position for the Browns. Second only to probably your Roadman's boy, Tim Couch, in terms of toughness. No one should ever question Baker Mayfield's toughness. He is a gamer. He wants to be out there with his guys, even if he's not even close to 100%. That is never in dispute. I've never said otherwise about the Bake Show. But when you take the field, you are judged by what you do on the field. Whether you're dragging a leg or massaging your ribs or your shoulders numb, you're going to be judged by your performance as soon as you decide to play. And that was a crapola performance by Baker Mayfield. The two opportunities that he has had this year to carry his team to glory, he has failed miserably. And granted, he's not the only reason they've lost to the Ravens and the Steelers. But these were the opportunities where he had a chance to transcend, to rise above the muck and the mire and say, you know what? I'm number one overall pick in 2018. I am carrying us to victory, even if the rest of my team stinks. And he's failed miserably in both those opportunities.
I agree with you on that standpoint, DMan. He has yet to have a signature win. Well, he beat Baltimore last year. They went 14-2. Well, at the time, they had 2 losses, right? At that point in time. And what they run off? 12 in a row after that, and they didn't lose again and finished 14-2. This was his opportunity for a signature win, to make that statement to his teammates, to the Steelers, and to the rest of the National Football League. And he didn't get it done. Again, he was hurt. I think he should have been benched at halftime because what we hear from Stefanski after the game, he took him out near the end of the third quarter because, well, he didn't want to see him get hit anymore. Well, I think you saw that up until halftime. You could have pulled him there. Anyways, this was a chance for the team to make a statement and a chance for Baker Mayfield. And both of them, Ernest Beinered it. They dropped the ball. You look at this team and you go, division contender? No. Playoff contender? Probably, looking at all the other teams. And don't forget, there are 5 wild card, or wait, what is it? You have 4 division winners and then 3 wild. So there's 3 wild card teams, 7 teams total. There's an extra team this year for the pandemic season, whatever. So you've got that extra playoff spot available for the Browns. And let's see if they can grab that. Let's see how they do this week, DMan, against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, because remember, they lost to the Ravens and then bounced back and beat who? The Cincinnati Bengals. So the elixir to get well is what? The Cincinnati Bengals. So can they go on the road, put this? This is where I will, D-Man, if I'm a Browns fan, this is where I would be more upset. Yeah, you're upset that they got, just clobbered by the Steelers. But if you go into Cincinnati and let this loss linger and you lose 2 in a row, to me, that would be more upsetting than getting crushed by the better football team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right now. And so let's see what they do this week. I'm curious to see what Kevin Stefanski does. Baker supposedly doesn't feel as bad as he did last Monday. That was the report that came out of Berea today. So if he's healthy, there's no quarterback controversy.
Roman, let me just jump in. How is that even possible?
I don't know.
Could feel better now than he did a week ago?
I have no idea. It's a great question. I'm just telling you what I heard from Kevin Stefanski, right? So we'll see if he is. OBJ, we saw the drama queen do his thing after he was taken out. The starters were taken out. He's taking his helmet off, his shoes off, all that, walking on the sidelines. And I understand Baker. I mean, there were times when some guys were open and Baker just doesn't see it. D-Man, here's the biggest concern for me about Baker Mayfield. I'm all over the place tonight, but getting back to this because I just remembered it. Baker Mayfield in the pocket stinks. It's terrible. He has trouble when they're and the Steelers. Did you see what the Steelers did? You talk about game planning. They lined up wide on him because they didn't want him to roll out, right? They know that his best throws are when he's rolling right or rolling left because the avenues are there for him to see. In the pocket, he can't see. Look at the 2 interceptions he threw yesterday. Forget the injury. Those were putrid. Those were terrible. Those were embarrassing, and he should feel embarrassed for those 2 interceptions. All right? So the book on him is keep him in the pocket. He has trouble in the pocket. He throws, it sails high. Is it his height? Is it the arm strength? Is he not seeing the defense? Yes, yes, and yes. All of the above. So if I'm playing against Baker Mayfield, I'm setting the edge wide on my pass rush, and I'm keeping him in the pocket and seeing if he can beat me from there. So he had a chance for a signature win and failed miserably. But you know what? The defense is worse than Baker Mayfield is at quarterback. This defense, they have 2 players. They have Myles Garrett and they have Denzel Ward at times when he's healthy. That's it. And I know Jacob, the linebacker, Jacobs, I think it is, from LSU, he's been dinged. And I forget his name already because he hadn't played a game. The LSU Delpit, that's it, the safety. He's been out, and Joseph, I know they're a guy, but still, put all those guys in there. That wouldn't make this defense much better. There is not an all-pro player that they can add from the injured guys that would make an impact. So Andrew Berry, while he addressed the offensive side of the ball this offseason in free agency with Hooper and with Conklin, and then in the draft with Wills, he better address the defensive side of the ball this coming off season in free agency, trades, or in the draft, because it needs a major overhaul. The front 4 is average, okay, not bad. After that, the back 7 is horrendous. And that's why this offense is going to have to score 30 points a game for them to win, whether it's the Bengals, the Jets, the Steelers, the Ravens, whoever it is.
Yeah, when I look at defensive stalwarts on the Browns, I include Ogunjobi and Richardson when they're healthy and good enough to play. I think they're quality players to go with Garrett and Ward. But your point is well taken. There is a lack of playmakers on this team, on this defense, but it's
D-Man, think about this real quick. Garrett and Ward are the only 2 that could start for the Steelers. Yeah. That's it. That's it on defense.
But but what's troubling to me, having suffered through all these Steelers losses, Roethlisberger era. What is he? 22-3-1 or 23-2-1 against the Browns? Some obscene number.
Yeah, the Steelers are 37-8-1 since they came back in 1999.
Yeah, and here's the problem for me is, as an observer, it always feels like the Steelers players are bigger, stronger, and faster than the Cleveland players and more physical. But the reality is, if you look at their combine numbers, if you look at their media guide stats in terms of height and weight and everything else and 40 time and all that, they're not appreciably bigger, faster, and stronger than Browns players across the board. The reason they seem that way, the reason the Steelers seem that way, is because they play as a unit. They play as an amoeba. They're like they have a different form on every play. They're constantly moving. They're constantly banging into people. It feels like there's 20 of them out there when there's actually 11. And that is the type of mentality that I wish the Browns would have. And I just have never seen it, at least since 99. I haven't seen the swarm, the collective where you can plug and play, because you're not going to convince me that the Steelers defense is full of future Hall of Famers. But when they're put in a Steelers uniform and they play in that system under Tomlin and, Butler and the rest of whoever else before that, LeBeau, when they play Pittsburgh Steelers defense, their games, their individual games are elevated. And all of a sudden, the sum total of the parts is better than the individual parts. But the problem is Cleveland's never really been able to do that. And Baltimore kind of copied the Steelers in terms of their defense and how that attacking, pressure, blitzing defense can wreak havoc. A poor man's 46. I wouldn't want to, I mean, to me, the 85 Bears stands alone as the greatest defense I've ever seen. I know the Steelers had some great ones in the 70s, but that 85 defense, as far as attacking the quarterback, was the best I've ever seen, probably ever will see. But the Steelers and the Ravens do a pretty good imitation of that, because you never know where the pressure's coming from. They'll drop 9 if they have to. They'll rush 7. They'll rush 5. They'll stunt. They'll safety blitz, corner blitz, linebacker blitz. It doesn't matter. And I wish just 1 year, the Browns would have that type of attacking defense. And the thing is, if you have that type of defense, you don't have to draft in the top 10 every year. You can get guys in the latter part of the first round, like TJ Watt is, and like Bud Dupree is, or Cam Hayward. You don't have to get top 5 draft picks all the time, as long as they understand the system and they buy into the system. And that's what I wish the Browns would come up with, because then you could overcome some of these injuries a lot easier than you do. But going back to the Browns offense, I don't want to let OBJ off the hook, okay? And I know the apologists were out in force yesterday. Oh, yeah. What are you doing? You're picking on OBJ again. He's the favorite guy to pick on. He's a gamer. He's a competitor. He wants to win. Stop it. You try. If you're Odell Beckham Jr., you always told us, I want to play for Belichick. It's my dream to play for Belichick. I would like to see Odell Beckham Jr. as a member of the New England Patriots in the fourth quarter, when the Patriots are getting trucked, which is rare under Belichick, of course, but let's say they were. I want you to take your shoes off, Odell Beckham Jr. Please do that. You wouldn't be playing for Bill Belichick by the end of the day. He would have cut you. You're not going to disrespect the game like that and disrespect your teammates by taking your jersey, pulling it up to your shoulder pads and pointing to the crowd about pictures and saying, you want to take a picture of me again, and taking your shoes off and throwing your hissy fit. You wouldn't be able to play for Bill Belichick the way you behave, OBJ. Every week, it's something with this guy. And I told you after the Dallas game, I said, hats off to OBJ. I gave him the number one game ball in the end zone show. And I thought he deserved it. He was a difference maker against the Cowboys. But that doesn't mean that a couple of weeks later I can't sit there and go, why? Why do you always have to be the center of attention? Why can't you just take your beating like a man, sit down or stand up, shut up, keep your jersey on, keep your shoes on, and stop acting like a clown? Why do you have to be the center of attention all the time? And yeah, I know he's a competitor. And yeah, he wants to win. But you know what? Joel Bitonio wants to win. Baker Mayfield wants to win. Jarvis Landry wants to win. Denzel Ward wants to win. Any of those guys take their shoes off in the middle of the fourth quarter and throw a hissy fit? I mean, my goodness, how much more do you have to do, OBJ, to call attention to yourself? And you're upset because you're not getting the ball and you're open. Okay, fine. Talk to your player, your teammates. Talk to Baker. Go under the medical tent if you have to. Stay out of eyesight so the opponent doesn't see you having a hissy fit. But do that stuff with some decorum and some discipline, and stop this nonsense that we thought had stopped once the clown car had rolled out of town in the person of Freddie Kitchens. But once again, OBJ, it's all about him, and it's just disgusting.
All right, D-Man. So where does this team go from here? 24-hour rule.
5-2.
Yeah, I would think, right? So at 5-2, if they do get back on the winning track this week, right? And then you've got the Vegas Raiders coming across the country to play you in Cleveland, and then you've got the bye week where afterwards you might get Nick Chubb back. So if they get to, let's say they win the next two, and Vegas is about a 500 team. I look at them now. They beat the Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champs. So you got to give them some credit. But I look at them as about a 500 team, 8-8, 9-7. At year's end, the Raiders. So if they go into the bye week at 6-2, I mean that's progress, right? But my concern is, will they? Is this going to linger? Is Baker going to be able to play, even though he says he supposedly feels better today than he did last Monday? So Kevin Stefanski, he's going to have his ups and downs as a head coach, right, through all of this. So what do you expect this Sunday in Cincinnati against Joey Burrow, who's playing pretty decent football for a rookie number one overall pick?
Yeah, I mean, do you know the status, Roadman, of Mixon?
I do not.
Ask our research department, Chase Smith, to check on Mixon. That'll go a long way to telling me whether the Bengals are going to have a puncher's chance against Cleveland. I expect a much better effort by the Browns, because I think what we know about the Browns is that they are more than capable of beating inferior competition.
Yes.
And the Bengals are inferior competition. They are, they're not very good. But the problem is with that analysis, the difference is the Bengals, it's no secret, they're rebuilding. Okay. Yes, they have veterans sprinkled in, the Mixons and the AJ Greens and whatnot, but they are by and large rebuilding with around their number one overall pick in 2020, Joe Burrow. The Browns are not rebuilding. Yes, they are inexperienced in terms of playoff waters, playoff contention. Yes, they're inexperienced in terms of winning seasons and coach longevity and all kinds of stuff like that. But this is a team that it should be capable of winning now. So beating the Bengals is no great accomplishment, because the Bengals are clearly at a different arc, a different point in their development than the Browns are. So I expect nothing short of a convincing victory against the Bengals. Now, will it happen? Maybe not, as you said, if Mayfield's still hobbled.
Right.
But also, how are the Bengals going to respond? Because the Bengals should have beaten the Colts at Lucas Oil.
Yeah, it blew a 21-0 lead.
Yeah,
I saw
21-0 and blew the lead. So, to me, the rebuilding Bengals, go one of two ways there. They either sit there and go, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of those disastrous years again. We're going to be awful, awful, awful. Or, hey, we were pretty darn competitive in a couple of these losses and in the tie, of course. And you know what? We should have beaten the Colts, who are a playoff caliber team, in their building. So instead of being down on ourselves after blowing that lead, we're going to use it as fuel and say, okay, we can beat Cleveland. And when we get up on Cleveland, we're not going to let up, or we're not going to give up the lead. So they can go one of two ways with it. But I still think no matter how motivated the Bengals are, the Cleveland Browns should defeat the Cincinnati Bengals, because that is a level of competition that the Cleveland Browns have proven or have shown that they're capable of beating.
According to our executive producer, you asked him in the research he was able to do. As of tonight, Monday night, when we're taping this, Mixon is expected to start against Cleveland. Now, that could change during the week. We'll have to wait and see. But as of today, that's what we're able to find out online. So you're right. Joe Mixon makes a difference. What's a tougher loss to come back from, D-Man? Is it tougher to blow a 21-0 lead and lose, or is it tougher to come back from a blowout?
Again, I think it depends on the mentality and the makeup of the locker room, because I really can't gauge what the Bengals locker room is like, because it may hinge very much on Joe Burrow himself. If Joe Burrow comes into the locker room and his players truly believe in him, and Joe Burrow says, hey guys, we kicked that Indy game. I take responsibility, even though, it wasn't all his fault. But if Burrow says, I take responsibility, and I know that, I can lead us to great heights or whatever. As long as they believe Burrow and he comes in with an attitude of put it behind us, let's go get Cleveland, then I think they overcome a blown lead. But if Burrow comes in with the dauber down and he's wondering, oh man, am I ever going to get when's my second win in the NFL going to come? And are we going to be 1-14-1? And his players feel that, or if his players don't respect Joe Burrow as a stud leader yet, and maybe I think they do, but if they don't, then I think it would be much harder to come back from a blown lead like that, because you sit there and you go, all right, well, I don't care what Joe Burrow says. We stink, and no matter what he tries to tell me, we're going to stink some more. But I think my sense is Burrow is respected in that locker room. He's shown, that he's a winner in college and high school. And just because he hasn't won more than one game in his first 6 tries at the NFL level doesn't mean he's not a winner. So I think the Bengals will be ready to play on Sunday, and the Browns need to be ready to match the intensity and the physicality, I guess, because I don't know that the Bengals are all that physical, but the Browns could stand to, push a team around once in a while. But I expect the Bengals to give the Browns their best effort is what I'm saying.
I expect the Browns to win. I expect them to go into Cincinnati. I don't know if they'll win by a lot, win by a little. I think that if need be, whether it's Case Keenum or Baker Mayfield, I think it's not just on the quarterback. The coach has to coach better. They were 1 of 15, D-Man, on 3rd down and 4th down plays in the Steeler game. Okay. And Kevin Stefanski said after the game he didn't put them in the best position to win. He didn't do any favors for Baker Mayfield and everything. And I agree with him. That was a bad game. So Stefanski needs to bounce back this week just as much as the players do, and I expect that to happen. Cincinnati is still Cincinnati. They're 1-4-1 for a reason. Okay. Joe Burrow, go Tigers, one team, one heartbeat, Joe Tigers. I mean, I love the guy, former Buckeye, won national championship, greatest season any quarterback's ever had in college for 1 year. But this is still the Bengals. I don't care if it's in Cincinnati, if it's in Cleveland, if they played this in Canton, wherever it would be played. This is a game the Browns should win. I think they will win. And then, again, you've got one more game before the bye week. So that's the way I look at this. I don't want to call it a must win, but I expect them to win somehow, some way on Sunday.
I'm with you there. Roadman, when I look at the other team, well, because we've talked Bengals, Browns, and we talked Steelers. The other team in the AFC North, the Ravens, they got up on the Eagles, and then I think they got bored, and the Eagles made it close. If you had to choose right now, which team is better in your mind, the Steelers or the Ravens?
If Roethlisberger is healthy, the Steelers. I think the Steelers have better offensive weapons outside of the quarterback position. Ben's not going to run like Lamar, right? But Ben can you're seeing what Ben means to that team. You're seeing, Duck, Duck, Goose and Mason Rudolph last year. I looked it up. I think in the 2 games against the Browns last year without Roethlisberger, the Steelers combined to score 27 points. They had 38 yesterday, right? Now, one of those came on a pick 6. Take that away. Still, Ben led them to 31 offensive points yesterday in 1 game. The Steelers, without Ben last year in 2 games, scored a total of 27. So he means so much to that offense. Ben Roethlisberger is, for the Steelers, what Nick Chubb, I think, is for the Browns. And without that player, you're going to struggle. And we saw that with Nick Chubb this week against the Steelers, and we saw that last year against the Browns without Ben Roethlisberger in both of those games. So if Ben's healthy, I think the Steelers' defense is better than the Ravens, although losing Devin Bush to the torn ACL, that's a big loss for them, okay? How they're going to fill that hole, I don't know what middle linebackers are out there as street free agents who might be available before the trading deadline. It's something they'll need to consider if they want to make a Super Bowl run. But I still think with that, front 5 of who is it? Alua, I think, in the middle, Stephon Tuitt, Cameron Hayward, and then you add on the outside Bud Dupree and T.J. Watt and Vincent Williams and one of the other linebackers there. I think the Steelers, even though their running game isn't exceptional, it serves its purpose. It can get you a 100-yard game from a Connor if he's healthy playing. But I just think the Steelers are the better team overall. But we're going to find out in 2 weeks, D-Man. The Steelers are 5-0, and the best team they've played is the Browns at 4-2. And the Browns, are better, but they're not one of the elite teams in the AFC. The Steelers this week go to Tennessee, 5-0. The following week, they are at Baltimore, 5-1. The week after that, they're on the road at Dallas, who's getting, dump trucked by the Arizona Cardinals right now as we tape this podcast. So 2 out of the next 3 weeks, the Steelers we're going to get a better understanding of who they are and who the Ravens are as they go head to head. So right now, I'm leaning the Steelers' way. Talk to me in 2 weeks after Pittsburgh goes in, to Baltimore, and we'll see into the bird's nest and see what happens.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read 1 book a month, and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us, and then listen in.
Hey everyone, it's Cameron Justice, co-host of the Orange is Orange or Browns podcast. Make sure you check us out for everything Browns. We got you covered before the game, after the game. Here are our takes, here are our feedback, here are our criticisms, and our praises. If you like the Browns, you're going to love this podcast.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Using a narrative storytelling approach, the Hyman Podcast was created to start conversations that need to be human. Week by week, I'll break down walls and barriers and make people wildly uncomfortable, all the while giving a voice to the voiceless and the marginalized. Consider this your personal invitation to be part of that conversation.
Roadman, I'd like to wrap this pod with a shift in sports. I know the Indians are out, but the World Series begins on Tuesday night between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Tampa Bay Rays. I am as excited about this World Series as I've been about a lot of World Series. Because,
really?
Oh, absolutely. Number one, because the MLB season in a lot of people's mind wasn't even going to be played.
Guilty.
And number two, once it was started, it was going to be canceled because of COVID outbreaks, and that didn't happen.
Guilty.
So I give a lot of credit to Rob Manfred. He has his issues and detractors, including me and you, and we've said this on previous podcasts that I'm not saying that just because I compliment Manfred now doesn't mean that he's immune from other criticisms, but the fact that he shepherded this league through this COVID pandemic situation, where he had clearly the biggest challenge of any of the four majors, because he had 30 venues in play and he had travel to and from these various venues where he didn't have hubs, he didn't have bubbles, and in the NFL's case, he didn't have limited travel like the NFL does. So. Unbelievable job by the MLB just to get a season off, let alone a very stirring, very compelling playoffs. I know that, the ratings are low. They've been low for basically every sport, but especially low for baseball. That's a shame, because there's been a lot of great theater in the postseason, including the two LCSs going 7 games, the Braves Dodgers and the Rays Cheatstros. And I'm excited because the Cheatstros are out. I mean, I told my wife, Denise, the lovely Denise, I said, if the Cheatstros come back on the Rays and win this ALCS, I am not going to watch one inning of the World Series. I will steadfastly refuse to watch the World Series if that cheating bunch of arrogant, pompous asses make it to the World Series. And thank God, and I know this, you say, why don't you thank God for other things? I thank God for the fact that the Rays held off that charge and wound up winning Game 7 after taking a 3-0 series lead and losing the next 3. So I'm excited to see the Rays in the World Series, and I like the Dodgers because I'm a big fan of their manager, Dave Roberts, just as I'm a fan of the manager of the Rays, Kevin Cash, both with Cleveland ties. It's a fascinating matchup because the Dodgers have, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 payroll in the MLB, and the Rays are bottom 5 in the payroll basically year after year for how many years. So you got the big spenders against the small spenders. You've got two organizations that are very familiar with themselves, though. They know each other well. So it should be a fascinating series. The Rays are, full of guys who throw 100 miles an hour, or so it seems. The Dodgers have a dynamic offense. The other thing I can't help but think about when I watch the Dodgers in this postseason run, let's go back to the offseason, entering this upcoming spring, entering the spring of 2020. The Cleveland Indians clearly had put Francisco Lindor on the market. They were trying to move Lindor with 2 years left of control. The number one suitor by far was the Los Angeles Dodgers because, number one, the Dodgers had players, prospects, you name it, whatever it is, Verdugo, Lux, whoever else. They had the players and they had the money. They had the players to give to Cleveland and they had the money to give to Lindor once they traded for him. The trade fell through in a lot of people's eyes because the Indians demanded a king's ransom and the Dodgers weren't willing to meet it. And you know what? I'm actually okay with that. I was okay with it at the time. I'm not going to be hypocritical now and say, that the Indians shouldn't have asked for the moon. Bottom line is the Dodgers moved on. Where did they move on to? They moved on to the Boston Red Sox. And they got Mookie Betts out of Boston and paid Mookie Betts with Frankie Lindor's money. And I can't help but watch the Los Angeles Dodgers this year and Mookie Betts, his impact on that team, and say, man, you know what? How close did the Indians come to actually moving Frankie Lindor to the Dodgers? And the Dodgers would have had Lindor instead of Betts. Now, would they have been in the same spot, the World Series? I don't know. I would assume so, but it's just interesting that Betts has done such a great job. The other part of it is not surprising, but it's interesting to see Betts thrive, both offensively and defensively in LA. The other part of it is Corey Seager, because Corey Seager is the shortstop who would have been coming to Cleveland to replace Frankie Lindor. Corey Seager has been out of his mind in this postseason. NLCS MVP. So the Dodgers and their fans aren't exactly crying over the fact that they didn't ship out Seager. They got Betts, and here they are, the World Series favorites.
Here's what I'll say, D-Man. I have watched maybe 3 games in all of these playoffs. Baseball bores me right now. I watched the Indians 2 games, and when they were done, there was one thing I wanted to see. Like you, I wanted to see the Astros not win the World Series. Now that they're out of it, I picked the Dodgers at the beginning of the season, D-Man, and then again before the playoffs started. Actually, I'm going for the trifecta on the Kenny and JT show on WHBC Monday through Friday, 3 to 7, shameless plug. I picked Tampa Bay to win the NHL, the Lakers to win the NBA, and the Dodgers to win MLB. Now, did I put any money on it? No, I should have. I might be able to pay off all my, all my bills and my debt and everything. And I, bet the trifecta in Vegas for those things to happen before it all started. So I guess I want the Dodgers to win for the trifecta to come through, but I really don't care because I don't have money on it. I just wanted to make sure the cheaters didn't win like you. So I'm happy with it. Here's the only thing I'll say about baseball. The one thing that I have noticed, and hopefully the Indians will take notice of this, D-Man, and correct me if I'm wrong here. You're more of the baseball guy now than I am, okay? Power arms and power bats get you to the World Series, and the Indians have neither, and that's a major concern.
That's true to a large extent. I thought you were going to go with limited payroll can win.
Hadn't won anything yet. They got there. What have the A's won? What have the Indians won? What have the Rays won? Okay, It's one thing to get there. It's another thing to win it. Okay, so talk to me when if the Rays win it, then you have a case. But until then, money usually, prevails more times than not.
Yeah, not always though. I mean, you think of the Royals as an example. The Giants were not massive spenders when they were ripping off 3 in a row. I mean, yeah, they were up there in payroll, but it wasn't like they were the Yankees or the Dodgers.
But they weren't the Indians or the A's either.
Look, I'm not saying that spending hurts you. It doesn't. I mean, that's obvious. But I like the teams that are creative with their finances and figure out ways to win, even if it looks like they don't have a roster, or we know that they don't have a roster of all-stars. But in the Rays case, they clearly say, you know what? We're going to win with power arms. And you can also say this about the Rays. Even though their previous 2 regular seasons were good, you could say that a short season, a 60-game regular season, plays into their hands because
absolutely,
their relievers don't have to get stretched as much and extended. But again, these guys were able to hold up the previous 2 regular seasons. I think they won 90 plus in each of the last 2 years. So it's not like they couldn't win over 162 games.
Yeah, but D-Man, that would have been the 3rd consecutive season of that, right? And we saw the toll that it took on an Andrew Miller, right? We saw the toll that, it took on players from the Warriors and the Cavaliers making the finals 4 years in a row. You know what I mean? The accumulation of games eventually wears you down. So this shortened season definitely helped Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and let me see. I'm just double checking here. The Rays, 2018, 90 and 72, and then last year, 96 and 66. But here's what I'd like the Indians to do. We know the Dolan ownership is not going to be spending money anytime soon. They are going to be following the Tampa Bay model as closely as they can. It's just the reality of it. They're not going to pick up Carlos Santana's option. They're probably not going to pick up Brad Hand's option, and they're going to probably move Frankie Lindor in the offseason. That would be lopping off more than $40 million in payroll.
Yep.
And then of course you replace it with a certain amount. But the point being is they're not going to be paying a lot of money to a lot of people next year or even the year after that. I think the days of the 9-digit payroll under the Dolan ownership are gone.
Well, and then their chances of winning are going to diminish greatly.
Well, but here's the thing, though. My feeling is this. If you do want to adhere to the Tampa Bay model, you got to just stock as many power arms as you can. Find as many guys like Emmanuel Clase. They can't afford to get popped for PDs. But the other thing you need to do is you got to find me hitters who get in that box, and I don't care what their resume is. I don't care what's on the back of their baseball card. They get in that box and they grind, and they are tough outs, and they work pitchers. And you see that with the Rays. You see it, of course, with the Dodgers. Just because they're free spenders doesn't mean they don't have really good hitters and guys who grind. But you saw it against with the Yankees when the Yankees played the Indians. You need to get in that box and you need to fight and scratch for every single pitch, during every single pitch. And I don't think the Indians have that team offensive mentality where we are going to be a pain in the rear. Even if we make an out, we're going to make you work for it. And I just don't see enough of that out of Cleveland's offensive players over the years. That's got to improve, in addition to more power arms, and we'll see what happens. But if you're an Indians fan and you think the Dolans are suddenly going to start spending, you're in la-la land.
They need to sell the team then. Okay. And if this pandemic, is hurting them more than other teams, then they should seriously consider selling the team. Because if they can, what will this be? The fourth straight year, DMan, they've decreased payroll? If they do what you said, and I agree, don't bring back Santana, no problem. Don't bring back Hand, I have no problem with that. Lindor I have a problem with, but I understand he's asking for the moon. I get it and all that. But what will this be? The fourth straight year where they've decreased pay? Third or fourth straight year? What would it be?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to count this year because of the prorated salaries and everything else. But, yeah, as far as regular seasons go, it'll be, I don't know, 3 or 4.
So, I mean, if that continues, they're not going to win. It's not going to happen. And you need guys, like you said, home runs, power arms. I'll give you an example. I'm looking at it right now. Team batting stats in the postseason. Let's see. Tampa Bay Rays, 25 home runs. That's first. The LA Dodgers, 18 postseason home runs. That's third. 22, the Cheaters from Houston. So there you go. You had the Astros in the ALCS, Tampa Bay in the ALCS. They're 1 and 2 in home runs. And then you have the Dodgers, 1 and 3 in home runs. Then you have the Dodgers there with 18 home runs, the number 2 team hitting bombs in the postseason in Atlanta. Now, granted, they played a few more games, but still, those are the 4 teams that went. So home runs, power arms, got to figure that out, man. And if you got to do it if you're telling me you're being cheap again, then you better find some cheap power arms that can get it done. You better out scout everybody, out draft everybody, out trade everybody, and make sure you get power bats and power arms. Because right now, Major League Baseball here, and I say this on the radio show, the NBA is about the 3, Major League Baseball is about the home run and power arms, and the Indians are trying to do it a different way, and it's not going to work. That's what I'll say.
I hear you, Roadman.
So, all right, DMan, anything else to add before we get out of here today?
I got nothing.
Nothing? You done? All right. Hey, I hope by tomorrow you're feeling better, that this clears your system, okay? Gets out of your system by tomorrow, with the Browns, and then you can move, like Bill Belichick would say, it's on to Cincinnati. And that's what you are tomorrow. You're on to Cincinnati to see what the Browns will do in Cincinnati on Sunday. All right, brother?
You got it, man.
All right, there he is. He's DMan. I'm the Roadman. Thanks to our executive producer, Chase Smith, the Press Play Podcast Network guru, making sure we're up and running with all of these Next Man Up podcasts. We'll do it again soon. Until then, everybody, be safe out there. See you. Bye.